Welcome to another edition of Trail Runner Nation. My name is Don Freeman.
I'm Scott Warr. And today this is going to be a fun one because we have a friend that's come on, and it's always fun to talk with friends, especially if you're making running motions. But we were thinking the other day, how can you find more joy in running? That's been kind of a theme that I've had in my mind for at least the last year or so. How can I find more joy in running? How can I be more consistent in my activity and diligent in getting out there? And how do I improve my overall health? Those questions we're going to answer today with a friend of ours, Floris Gierman, who just wrote a book called Running Breakthroughs. It's a new book that he's written, and it's actually an interesting book. I'm going to have him explain why he thinks he wrote it and why I think it's important or interesting and different from other books. It includes years of conversations with runners, coaches, and health experts, and it distills some of the habits, the mindset, the small changes that lead to these lasting improvements. In a world full of running books and trail advice, this one we think kind of stands out for its focus on its sustainability and joy, and just basic tips and tricks that you can easily digest and implement into your daily running. This is going to be a fun one. We hope you lace up your shoes and enjoy us on today's run. The opening question for you, Floris.
Yes.
You don't see because I have a green screen and people are listening instead of watching YouTube, but behind me is a bookshelf, and I bet you I have 100 books, 100 running books. There may be more than that, but books that we've reviewed on the podcast, books that we've read. Some of them have been very well used. Some of them look like they've never been opened. Why did you decide in your many activities in running, as a coach, as a podcaster, as a manufacturer of quality running gear, why did you think, I think I should write a book about running?
It's a great question right there. For me, so the book is called Running Breakthroughs, and that is really what I experienced at several different chapters in my life. Like when I first started running, I just ran, and very often I would kill myself in my runs. Sometimes I had joy with it, but sometimes it was very much suffering, and I didn't really enjoy it that much. I got injured quite a bit. Sometimes I would come back from a run and I feel completely exhausted or just didn't have any energy left to I would just be laying on the couch for the rest of the day.
Floris, I've got to jump in and ask. So, why did you even start running? I mean, what made you from just being
agonizing?
Yeah, I just want to know what happened. What made you do it again?
There was some joy in it as well. There was just like this in between of like there were moments of joy, but there was also quite a bit of like challenges along the way with in particular even like injuries. I would get sidelined quite a bit with just different injuries along the way. Funny enough, in 2007 I ran my first marathon, and I swore I would never do it again. I thought I was gonna die. Mile 20, the typical like death march, like begging someone for a Gatorade on the side of the course and slugging to the finish line. And sure enough, I didn't run a marathon for another 7 years. But then 2013, I joined a group running coaching program with Coach Jimmy Dean in Los Angeles, the Coyotes. And very early on, interestingly enough, I got introduced to your guys' podcast. And this is where there was one conversation with Dr. Phil Maffetone about slow down to speed up. And this changed everything for me, as in my entire approach of you don't have to kill yourself in workouts to improve. You can actually find joy in the moment of slowing down, actually being much more present to look around yourself and get more in tune with your body and in tune with your mind. And from there on, things started to click. And then like I ran my first marathon in 4 hours 11. I ran my second in 2 hours 55 minutes.
Wow.
And so that was not only time-wise a huge improvement, but it also felt like I discovered this entire new way of running that I didn't even know existed. And so after that, I had my own little YouTube channel at the time already. I just wanted to tell the world about this. And so first I interviewed Dr. Phil Maffetone and then Mark Allen, 6-time world champion Ironman. And then I just started interviewing a bunch of recreational runners that also experience similar things. And over the years, I had like hundreds and hundreds of stories of breakthroughs from people, not just with the slow down to speed up, but through a variety of other ways that I really wrote this book as it was the book that I wish I would have read earlier on in my running journey to like discover this nice, gentle way of training that has so much joy along the way. And interestingly enough, through all these conversations with elite athletes, with experts, and even with recreational athletes, there were some common threads. And one of the main ones goes back to what you were just talking about, Scott. It's like finding joy, finding ways to train consistent. That doesn't always mean pushing yourself harder in every workout, but that also means slowing down from time to time. And that means like listening on day to day instead of being so glued to one specific training schedule there.
So what I am understanding from that explanation, Floris, is this book is the book that you wish you had in 2007 or prior to that as you were training for your first marathon. So it may be a little bit of a memoir, if you will, of things that you've learned and things that you've heard other people learn to help them become more better, enjoy running better, and find joy in running.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing is, even 10 years after I discovered this, there were still different ways that I learned new joys on new levels of running that I didn't know existed. As in, initially I was very time focused, not just in road running, even on trail running. I was still very much pushing pace, looking at placement in races and different things, to a point that at one point I discovered another gentleman named Lawrence van Lingen. He's a movement specialist from South Africa. And he started talking about the flow rope, which is like this rope that you can use to flow backwards. And you really become in tune with your body much more. And there's a lot of people who grab a rope and who think about flowing it backwards, but the only way that they're able to swing it is forward. And it's a neurological wiring thing where once you learn how to properly backward swing it, it completely gets your chest in flow, your body just starts moving much more with fluidity. And when I discovered this, like being able to run with an open chest, literally like my shoulders would open up more. And I would like it's an interesting way to discover additional ways that, as much as I thought after 10 years of improving in my running, and my times had dropped, my enjoyment in running had dropped, this was a whole nother level that I didn't even know existed. And so it was through a combination of the flow rope, there was some backwards walking in there, and a few other mobility exercises that really, I felt it calmed the nervous system. And I think especially in today's, everyone is constantly glued to their phone. Everyone is constantly on the go, go, go. To be able to calm the nervous system is a really indirect benefit to your running as well. It's not just focused on the running, but there's so many other benefits is once we start paying close attention to how we show up in the daily life with stress management, how we show up from like a nutrition standpoint, from a sleep standpoint. And I started paying like not only more attention to the running, but so many of these other areas that really helped improve the joy in running. So.
Wow, that's I have a couple questions, Scott, and I won't hog the podcast because I have a lot of them. But I'm going to start with this one. When you say slow down, what are we talking about? When you say slow, help define what that means for the rest of us. Slowing down 50%. I'll let you take it.
There's quite a few runners that run in this middle zone to high zone. It's zone 3, zone 4, possibly even higher than that. When you come back from a run and you finish and you feel like you could have gone quite a bit longer, you felt like you could have gone harder, you could have done that same run again, those are good signs. And I think there's a variety of different ways that you can calculate what your zone 2 would be. You guys have had Dr. Phil Maffetone on there, 180 minus your age with some fitness adjustment. That's one way of going about it. You can look at what is your max heart rate, what is your resting heart rate, and you can put it in one of the heart rate calculators online, and that gives you a breakdown of zones. But for those who don't even have a heart rate monitor, just being able to go out on a conversational pace or while nasal breathing, those are pretty good indicators that you're running at a low enough intensity. If you're able to have a conversation with a friend and you can just do that comfortable without huffing and puffing and having to catch on sentences, those are good signs. Yet many runners are way above that. In particular, even if you go on group runs or if you go on the trails, in the beginning, there's quite a few people who have to get used to that. So yeah, there's a few different ways of going about it. But I think just most people have to slow down significantly, I would say by 20, 30, 40%. And it might feel like a walk. There's quite a few people who have to start out with walking. But you will be surprised if you do that for 1 month or 2 months, that your pace at the same heart rate is going to improve by 30 seconds, 60 seconds, or even more per mile.
So, Floris, in your experience, because as you said this, I really hadn't thought of it. Do you think a way to check in to see if you're running, quote unquote, slow enough, should you be able to keep your pace just nasal breathing only? Is it possible to run with nasal breathing only as your way to measure your effort?
The nasal breathing is an interesting one because most people have a different nostril size. It sounds a bit odd to say that, but some races literally have higher or like larger nose openings than other people. Also, altitude comes into play a little bit over here. Nasal breathing in Boulder at 7,000 foot or 8,000 foot would be different than nasal breathing here in Irvine at sea level. That being said, I think it's a ballpark indication of like, yeah, you're running at a low enough intensity. That being said, I've had Danny Dreyer from Chi Running on my podcast, and he talked, yeah, you can run a marathon while nasal breathing. And I was like, that's BS. That's not possible. Sure enough, once I started training by doing higher intensity runs with nasal breathing and even putting a nasal dilator on, so opening the nostrils a bit further, I was able to run with nasal breathing at 160 heart rate.
Oh, wow.
And so this is something I first didn't believe was possible, but there are ways that you can train that. So I don't think nasal breathing is necessarily always the best way about that. And what you will notice is if you're doing high intensity with nasal breathing, your blood oxygen levels are going to go down. Like if you use like a blood oxygen meter on your finger and you look at it, normally it would be like 98, 99. That will drop down quite a bit. So it's not very comfortable to do.
Floris, you mentioned that you joined the SoCal Coyotes, Jimmy Dean Freeman's running group down there. And I've never run with the group, but this is the way I envision that group to be. You show up early in the morning or whenever you show up, and there are people that are wearing really short dolphin shorts, and they have their singlet on. And when Jimmy says, "Okay, let's go," it's a competition. How do you? What are some tips that you have for listeners that are going to group runs to keep their intensity low? It's very easy to get into that race mentality when, I want to go run with this person over here because I want to talk to them during the run today. How do you force yourself?
Hey, before we start with that, Floris, I think, for the Coyotes, maybe we should clarify, is it really dolphin shorts, singlets, and a gun that goes off at the beginning of the run?
Well, that's what I wanted to say, indeed. First of all, I think there's this perception sometimes for people who might not be that familiar with trail running groups or with even running groups in general of like, it can be intimidating. It can be like a step into the unknown. For me, the first run when I showed up over there, having done some road running, going over there, I literally showed up at the trails. I had no idea what to think about trail running even. I was wearing a marathon belt with a bunch of little bottles on the side. I was one of those. And I showed up at the Coyotes and I was like, yeah, I'm here for the run. And everyone had like these cool handheld bottles and they had packs and all that stuff. And so I think as you go through it, you end up learning what works and what might not work. But everyone is super welcoming. Everyone is super open arms over there. one of the first things you will notice is that people care much less about pace on the trails than they do on road. And walking is totally normal. And I feel that part of realizing that when you're walking, you're training too. It's not that you're not doing anything. Literally walking is part of trail running. And so you, like you guys honestly said in our podcast conversation that we recorded, that's in the book as well, you guys talked about adjusting your pace, but your intensity stays the same. So you really just adjust that, whether you're running 8-minute miles or whether you're running 14-minute miles, or whether you're hiking 14-minute miles.
Scott, I think I jumped on your question. Go ahead and finish your question. I had to try to defend the reputation of the coyotes.
No, he answered my question. But I have a new one.
Oh, good.
Obviously, the book is called Running Breakthroughs, and you mentioned one of the first breakthroughs that you had by slowing down to speed up. What is the last breakthrough that you've had, the most recent breakthrough that you've had in your running?
I would say the biggest one for me was when I started really playing around with the nervous system and calming that down completely. Even though I thought I was a relative calm person, I realized how much tension I was still holding in the body. And so I've literally had moments of absolute joy and emotional, literally like crying on my runs, which normally only happens to me after a hard finish at a race through the finish line. Sometimes I get emotional. It's just like the onions are peeled raw and it just comes out. But if you end up going out on a run and you run at a relative comfortable pace, but it feels so joyous, it feels so like in flow that this pent up tension, or I don't know what it was, it all of a sudden just came out. And I think this is where, to me, that really happened through 3 main exercises that I just started doing on a very daily basis. And that was through, like, I think I should explain that flow rope a little bit better, because I think it has been one of the, like, I did an interview with Lawrence Van Lingen on my podcast and on my YouTube channel as well. And there were literally hundreds of people in the comments who experienced similar things while using the flow rope. And so, by the way, I'll interview you guys after this because I truly believe you guys should have a conversation with Lawrence at some point as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
He's a dear friend. He also wrote the foreword actually for the book. And the way that he impacted my life, similar to Dr. Phil Maffetone, it's just I wanted that to get out in the world. And so the main thing with the flow rope really is it restores your natural movement and your rhythm. Like it improves your posture and your fascial balance. And like you really feel that your entire body is just more connected. You start moving from your core and from your hips rather than all these isolated body parts. And it really promotes that relaxation and the flow state. And when you start feeling that, when you start literally feeling like your heart rate variability calms down, like your heart rate variability improves, your lactate levels build up less. So Lawrence, he works directly together with Taylor Knibb and with several other like world-class elite athletes. That's one of the main focuses, is just calm the nervous system. And that can be done through a variety of ways. But for me, that was like grabbing one of these flow ropes, backward swinging it for 5 minutes a day. And you will start noticing more fluidity in your running. If you then add a few minutes of backwards walking on top of that, and then there's like a third exercise, which is called the awesomizer, which really helps. like Dr. Mark Gugazella, he actually talks about the awesomizer as well, but it truly helps open up your hips and you start using your glutes much more. Once you do that, and you just feel like it's a different way of running. So
yeah, the power to propel us down the trail doesn't necessarily happen in the calves and the hamstrings and quadriceps. It's really in the torsion of your body, your hips going one way, your torso going the other, and the rest, the legs are just catching this power that you're creating with your torque of your own body. And that's what you're capturing with your engine that you're describing in this.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's one of those things like Taylor Knibb, she was like world champion in the triathlon multiple times. When I sat down for a conversation with her, she specifically said she used to rush through things in the day a lot. And then all of a sudden, she started really taking her time. So instead of always feeling like you're running late, started leaving 5 minutes, 10 minutes earlier. And so that you always feel that you have enough time. And I'm guilty of that myself. I often feel like, it's cool, school drop off to the kids, and then it's to the office, and then recording a podcast, and then it's like you're constantly on the go, go, go. Whereas even for everyone listening here, if you would 5 minutes to 10 minutes earlier, if you can, leave and have that little buffer in between, you feel less rushed. It calms your nervous system. Take 3 times a day, 1 minute, just 1 minute to sit down and check in with yourself and do a few deep breaths, inhales and exhales. You would be surprised what these things will do to your nervous system and how that will actually directly and indirectly impact your quality of your sleep, your joy in running. You just end up becoming more present. And I think it's the opposite. I see everyone or many people are disconnected because they're always on their phone. And then it's like on the other end of the spectrum, it's like you can be very present. And so it's like, what can you do kind of to find that right balance in between? But I truly think like the more present you can be, the more in tune you become with your body and mind, and it will indirectly improve your running as well.
Scott, I need to make a request. I don't have a hand that can reach over to your Eureka button.
Eureka!
But that is such a great point, and it answered my question that I wanted to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I don't have a lot of good questions. Is in running, we can find ways that it translates into or transforms into our life. Like we learned it on the trail, but it relates to our life as well. And you just described it perfectly. There's flow running, but there's flow life as well.
Absolutely. And yeah, there's a variety of different ways that you can do that. I think it's so easy for our brains to go a million miles an hour when you're running as well, versus the more I've truly noticed when I slow down in my running, I'm able to look around more. I can see things that I previously haven't seen before. And it's purely by slowing down a little bit. But the interesting thing is, there's quite a few people who think when you run slow, you're going to be running slow forever, or running slow is not enjoyable. But you will be surprised that when you actually slow down in your training for a while, that you will start improving aerobically. And it's this balance. You don't have to always run slow. I think like once or twice a week speed work is still a great balance in there. But as long as you do the majority of your runs at a low enough intensity, and then when you push it, actually push it hard enough as well. So,
one of the things that Mark Cucuzella had taught us is he's been a lifelong runner and competitive runner. He's fast. He said that now 3 days a week he just goes and walks his dog, and just gets a nice good brisk walk in. But then he added something that I thought was very telling, and that is when he finishes the walk, then he'll do some sprints on a grass field with bare feet or something like that. And so that's kind of that was a eureka moment when we had him on recently. But here's the thing that I would like to hit the eureka button for.
Eureka!
You can't do it before the comment, Scott. You've got to qualify.
Well, no.
First.
Okay. I just was preparing people because it's on the same comment, but I heard something different than what you did, Don. Here's what I heard. Because when I go out for my morning run, I'm using that run as the calming influence in my life. And what you're saying is maybe we need to even get ahead of that and get into a calm state before our run. And I know I joke about my good friend Don here and doing his Wim Hof breathing and his ice plunge bath in the morning before we go on the run. But he claims that it's made a world of difference in the way that his life goes. Does it help your running, Don, to do the Wim Hof breathing and the ice plunge before the run in the morning?
Well, I'm subscribing to Floris's slowing down in life. Just taking a moment, taking a beat, and don't try to rush through everything and compressing everything that I can imagine onto a list. Try to be, email flow. I mean, I think there's flow everywhere.
But
So did I answer
I
your question? I think it helps my
no,
running, Scott.
yeah, I was going to say those are all really good comments, and none of them refer to an answer to the question I was asking, which is,
So
does your Wim Hof breathing and the ice plunge in the morning calm you down and lower your anxiety so that your running is more efficacious?
no. Yes, it does. Yeah, it does. Of course it does. And that's why I do it. I really love starting the day like that, even though I hate not breathing and I hate getting into that cold water, but I feel complete and ready for anything after I get out, even our runs.
You surely feel like $1,000,000 when you come out of one of the plunges. That's for sure. I sometimes have a that's the only thing. I enjoy doing a cold plunge before I do strength training. Sometimes I'm a little bit cautious with doing a cold plunge before I go on a run, purely because I feel my muscles have gotten a bit shorter and tighter, that I'm just a bit cautious of the calves and the Achilles. That's the only part. But then again, if you still do a proper warm up, that can totally be good too. So.
There's a lot of really good stories in your book, Running Breakthroughs, and you list some of the running breakthroughs of some other people, and one that I liked was Daniel Edwards. If you can remember, there's so many in there. I just want to make sure you're up to speed with Daniel Edwards. I think you mentioned that at the age of 51, he ran his fastest. What was it? Was it a marathon?
Yes,
Anyway,
yes.
tell me about how he was able to do that, and what was his breakthrough.
So Daniel Edwards is an interesting. He was actually one of the podcast guests as well. So he was a recreational runner. He had several different challenges. He tried to improve in his running, and it actually didn't. Like, he kept hitting the wall. He kept getting injured. He kept getting burned out, just hitting plateaus. Eventually, he came across one of my YouTube videos where I talked about the joy of slowing down and how to go about it. And he actually enrolled in our running coaching program, the PB program. So I spoke to him twice a week on Zoom, and we talked through different ways that he could go about actually, in the beginning, slowing down and being gentle. And he was actually on medication as well for diabetes, so he actually had to slow down even more.
Mm-hmm.
But really being okay with walking, really being okay with the basic fundamentals. And he started improving. Sure enough, like, all of a sudden things started to click. And it is such a counterintuitive mindset for him, because he thought working harder will already, like, that's what is needed to improve. It wasn't until he started letting go of that ego component, which is a really big part of this, that all of a sudden he was able to run again the next day. He didn't feel exhausted. He didn't have those niggles and injuries anymore. And it was challenging. It was really frustrating, he said, for the first 4 weeks, 8 weeks. But eventually he ended up, like, starting to improve in his MEF pace, so in his aerobic pace. And then he started improving in his race times. And now he has literally set PRs in everything from 5K, 10K, half marathon. What I didn't realize is, after the fact, he sent me a message after I recorded a podcast with me. And he said, Floris, I was suicidal when I joined your program.
Wow.
And you telling me to slow down and have grace with myself. That's why I wrote this book.
That's wonderful.
That's really, really cool.
And sorry. The thing is, these stories are not uncommon. I hear this multiple times a week I had it recently, twice in a day. People reached out. I was suicidal. I beat myself up always killed myself in my workouts, and now I discovered a new way of running. And sorry, let me just drink a sip here.
It's a beautiful story,
Like,
not uncommon story where people will take that lesson from the trail and bring it back to them when they get back home. And I think that's the real joy of what you're doing for the community too.
well, and that's the thing, right? I think we live in this no pain, no gain mentality. Like, the ego part is such a big one for that. I see so many people, even with having to prove themselves on social media and toughening through workouts and any of those kind of things. And the reason I wrote the book was purely, I kept hearing dozens of suicide stories. I kept hearing dozens of breakthrough stories from people of like, it completely changed my life. It turned my life around to be kind to itself, to not beat myself up, to just enjoy the workout, to stop thinking about finish time and to just be present. And that's why I was like, this book just has to live in the world. Like, I think it's great that I have like 200 videos on a YouTube channel. It's nice to have all these podcasts, but I think to actually have a physical book that you can sit down on the couch and just read the book, or we made an audio book to be able to go on your run and just get the best transformative stories from recreational runners, the insights from experts, and then the thought processes from elite athletes all combined. That's really why I wrote the book. So
When you were making those comments, made me think that what I've gone through in my head is saying, you know what, if no one was out here watching me run, and this is one of my final runs ever, how would I run this thing? Would I run it for to satisfy my ego or to crush my best time that I've done on this loop? Would I run it with joy, give grace to myself, and just make it easy and fun and light and enjoyable, for lack of a better term? And when I started doing that in my mind and giving myself permission not to thrash myself, but just to enjoy myself, it changes everything. Is you don't care. You know, I stopped wearing a watch and quit measuring.
And 100%. And here's the interesting thing, though. I'm all about slowing down and taking runs on the day to day. I love pushing it hard too. It's not that we don't do hard workouts. It's just when the time is right, when the foundation is there, when our body is able to handle it. We first need to have that foundation. 60 to 80% of runners get injured every year. It's because often they're doing too much too soon. They just don't have that foundation to handle it. But once you have that foundation, by all means, go out there and enjoy those hard sessions. I love those hard sessions. I know many people do. It's just do that from time to time. Don't make that the default mode. So
as a great follow-up comment on that, just go out easy all the time. Sometimes there is joy in pushing to get to the top because you can, and you can do it without pain because you haven't trashed yourself for the whole week. You're turning it up that day because you feel good, like your legs are springy and not, just fatigued.
absolutely. I think the internal voice is very, very important here. So even when sitting down with Courtney DeWalter, she mentioned one example, and I started implementing it in my training too. It's like first thing when she wakes up in the morning is she just checks in with her systems. Like, how is she feeling? How are her energy levels? How is her body? Is anything off? And based on that, she will decide what to do for training that day. And I do a similar thing too. And some days, like last week, I ran the Amsterdam Marathon with my sister. It was a great experience, but for several days after, I just didn't feel very excited to run. And then I just checked in with myself, and that was the internal dialogue. And now here we are a week later, and I felt so excited again to run. And I was like, well, there you have it. Just listen to that voice, listen to that, follow that intuition. I think sometimes when anyone listening here, if you're not feeling that excited to run for a few days, which is very common, like we're now going into the winter months again, sometimes the day get colder, they might get darker again. Like if you notice that I'm not feeling that excited to run, ask yourself, like, what is it? Is it possibly that you're tired, that you need a day off? Take 1 or 2 days off. Maybe you need some more sleep. Sleep is one of the most underutilized training tools for athletes. So the sleep plays a big role in that. Maybe it is you need to mix things up. Maybe if you're going on the same route, just start running with a friend or start joining a running group or anything like that. So, but identify what that internal dialogue is telling you. And this is where I think, once again, becoming a bit more present. And I think you can either just check in with yourself in the mornings. Another great tool is just to write down in a journal, and you start to recognize some of these patterns over time. But yeah, just being a bit more self-aware between mind and body, I think goes a long way for runners.
I think that's really important, and there are competing theories out there in the running community. There are some influencers out there that are forcing guilt on you, saying you shouldn't be sitting on the couch, and calling you names and saying that you need to get out and run and push yourself, and in some cases we need a kick in the butt to get out and do something. But I think for most runners, we probably need to give ourselves more grace than a kick in the butt, and just say, you know what? Yeah, if you wake up in the morning and you say, I don't want to go run because it's cold, you probably should go for a run. But if you wake up and you say, boy, my legs are just heavy and I don't feel like getting out of bed, that may be a sign that you're listening to your body, and your body is telling you it needs rest.
Exactly.
And so we need to be careful of those outside influences, with this so much social media out there, with these jokers that are saying are making you feel guilting you into running.
100%. And I do think every runner is different too. What might work for one person really well, of like some of that tough love, might not work for another person.
Yeah.
But then again, obviously the recovery is such an important one regardless. And I'm not thinking about short-term gains here. I'm really thinking about setting yourself up for the long term here. I want to share one example that I thought was pretty interesting from one of the athletes that I coached. Is very often what we see is someone starts running at a low intensity and they start improving. They're becoming faster at the same heart rate. But this guy was in his mid-30s. He had been running at low intensity, really focusing on slowing down deliberately for about 4 months, and he was not improving at all. And so one of my first questions at that point is typically, how is the quality of your sleep? How much are you sleeping and what's the quality of your sleep? And he explained he used to be a medical resident student. He went through medical school, only slept 4 to 5 hours a night at that point. And then after he graduated, he's still stuck in this habit of sleeping 5, sometimes 6, but just not enough. When I challenged him, hey, go run or go force yourself or try to find a way to sleep at least 7 hours a night. So 1 to 2 hours more than what he was used to. He used to be stuck at about 11 minutes per mile, so that was a 7 minute per kilometer at his top zone 2. Within 1 month of sleeping 7 hours a night, he improved by more than a minute.
Wow.
3 months later, by another 45 seconds. And this came to show to me that you can focus all you want on the running component, but unless things like sleep are in the right place, recovery, like nutrition, hydration, these things play a huge role in there. But I think sleep is on top of that pyramid, really. So,
with the coaching that you do, how often do you find that your athletes are not sleeping enough? Is that a common occurrence?
Sleeping is a very common occurrence. It really is, to a point that I had to make specific videos on it. I know like there's a ton of content around it at this point, but I think some basic hygienes, like Don, you were talking earlier about a morning routine with an ice bath and with breath work. I feel a lot of people are focused on a morning routine, but not necessarily on an evening routine. And this is a very simple one. If you can just set an alarm even an hour before bedtime, where it's like, all right, let's start the wind down routine. And that can be as simple as an hour before bed, you put your phone away. And then what is it that kind of brings calm to some people? That might be dimming the lights a bit instead of having full bright lights, dimming the lights a bit. Maybe it is taking a shower and then laying in bed and reading a book, or whatever it is to calm yourself down. Like we have 2 young children, we have an evening routine with them. But that doesn't mean that I can't have an evening routine for myself too.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
We're talking running breakthroughs, and we haven't talked about gait or anything like that. The breakthroughs that happen that wrap around those other hours in the day that allow us to enjoy those running hours. We need to support that. Almost like a running lifestyle isn't just when your running shoes are on.
Yeah,
It can be
absolutely.
everything to support it.
And I think it just gets you to a place of not forcing it, but it actually gets you to a place where you can run relaxed. And I think the more relaxed we can run, and I see this even at the end of certain races, when I can push hard at the end, but it becomes challenging, it is so easy to like clench your fist, to like move your shoulders up, to start running really tight. Yet, if you can start telling yourself, try to relax, try to focus on your breathing, take a double inhale, hard exhale. So, oh, I blew it on the mic over there, but like that, that pattern right there, it is incredibly calming. So, double inhale, hard exhale. If you can do that,
that's a military discovery, right? Doesn't the military do that to calm them?
It's used across the board. Even Dr. Andrew Huberman talked about it, of taking a second hard inhale, like that last bit, and then a hard exhale. It really has a calming effect on the body. And I, funny enough, didn't realize that. I've been using that on my own. Just towards the end of hard races, when I had to be present, I focused on locking myself into certain breathing patterns. And sure enough, then I saw a video by Andrew Huberman who described the exact same thing at that point, which is kind of funny.
It kind of resets. It could reset everything. Calms anxiety, lets you plug back into the flow state, instead of getting wrapped up into whatever your internal thoughts are. It kind of can, in the old days, Control Alt Delete, kind of resets everything.
Yeah.
You were talking a moment ago, and I wrote down a comment that there are times that our body needs to rest and it needs a break, and our legs need a break, and our torso, the whole thing that moves us down the trail. And I started thinking, not only does our body need a break, but our brain needs a break. Our brain is what moves everything and processes everything, and it's the generator of our internal dialogue. It's our motivation, it's our determination, it's our resilience. It's all those things happens between our ears. And if we're push all the time at work, at home, at all of our tasks on our lists, and even our trail run, our brain needs a break too. So slow down and give yourself that moment and let your brain freshen up.
Absolutely. And I feel in particular with nowadays, going back to the phone again, if we have 1 minute time, we grab the phone and we start scrolling where we used to not. For me, one of the things that has been very helpful is in the afternoon, just taking 10, 15 minutes. Like if I'm working from home, I would lay down on the bed, or if I'm working from the office, I would just go to my car and literally like sit or lay down. And I call it instead of meditation, it's meta thinking. And I just let my brain, there's so many thoughts going through the brain. I just let it kind of reorganize for a bit. And when I come out of that, I almost feel it's a second part of the day. I almost repeated my morning routine where it doesn't take much, but it just feels good to do. And I think it's these deliberate breaks, whether you take 1 minute in the morning, in the afternoon, and at night, or you take like 10 minutes in the afternoon just to kind of reset yourself. It's a big one. And just to add to that, yes, we're talking a lot of things outside of running, but at the end of the day, what it's doing, it's lowering our lactate buildup during our runs. It's calming the nervous system. It's literally what Taylor Knipp and even in my conversations with Eliud Kipchoge, for example, he lives a very simple lifestyle. He doesn't stack a whole lot of stuff. Yes, from time to time he has media appearances, but he lives in a training camp most of the time. And it's a very simple lifestyle. Why is that? So that he can handle more training load. If he would have as much things going on as the four of us on this call here, that wouldn't be the case. But now he can just keep stacking more. So what we can do in our daily life to kind of limit that, we can absorb our training better after that.
Well, I really, really like that. The micro breaks. just a moment to plug into the day, sit down, and just take it. Some nice breathing, relax, lower heart rate, all the stuff to let your mind catch up, to solve some problems that are silently being worked on behind the scenes, and force myself to do that. I'd like to do that. And thinking one step further, what about doing that during a long run? Is there a moment where you can just kind of, you don't have to sit on a rock, but you can bring yourself into that state even while moving? How do you bring yourself to that contemplative state and still travel? Can you do that?
Absolutely. I think I used to run with music a lot and listening to a variety of different things. And by all means, there's some people listening to this podcast while out on their run. And I think there's a time and place to do that. But from time to time, also going out and just listening to nothing but your breathing, your footsteps on the floor, your surroundings, feeling the sun on your skin, feeling the wind. Those things are very good too. I think it, once again, zaps you back to the present moment. But then again, sometimes our best thoughts kind of come when we're out there wandering on some of these runs, just like how you have the shower thoughts. The best ideas come in the shower. It's kind of similar as on a run as well. So absolutely, I think those are wonderful ways to do it.
This has nothing to, I mean, it's related, but it's a story that popped into my head and I thought I'd just blurt it out there and Ryan can edit out if it really does not enhance our discussion. When I was in college, I worked on the university grounds crew. So we did leaf pickup and composting and, just landscaping stuff around campus. And one of the things that we would do, one of the guys that was on our crew for a short time was a guy named Bob Marley. And he was from Kenya. And he was a member of the university track team. He was a sprinter. 100 meters was his forte. And he was a world-class sprinter, tall, lanky dude. And he was the slowest worker I've ever met in my entire life. He would walk from point A to point B, and it would take him, I mean, we would joke with him. We'd go, "Hey, Bob, how come you're walking so slow?" And he said, "So that I can run so fast." And he had this mentality that he needed to be calm and to not raise his cortisol levels in work, especially work that really didn't mean anything, landscaping around the university. But then we went and watched him race a couple times, and you'd see him in the starting block, and he'd be bouncing up and down like you see world class. And I'm going, I've never seen him bounce that high at all. When at work, we tell him to go, "Hey, you need to go weed this flower bed," and he'd go, "Okay." And it'd take him 15 minutes to walk 100 yards, but yet he's running, these world class 100-meter dashes.
That is spot on.
Anyway,
it almost reminds me of my daughter doing trick or treating. You couldn't get her to run to the end of the block until she starts trick or treating, and then she can literally run a 5K faster than anyone. So yeah,
she was preparing herself. She was preparing herself for that world class night of Halloween.
Yeah.
So Bob would carry a rake in the springtime to collect the leaves in the fall. Is that how slow Bob was?
Bob would wait in the spring for the leaves to fall. He would sit there and look up at the tree, wait for the buds to break, the leaves to form, and then shrink and fall off the tree. Anyway, his name was Bob Marley because his favorite artist was Bob Marley. He had a Kenyan name, but he changed it for when he moved to the U.S. So he became Bob Marley. He was a great guy.
That's awesome.
Hey, as you're talking about that too, we've also had the extreme pleasure of talking to Courtney DeWalter and Killian Jornet. And Killian just coming off this massive just adventure that he did here in the United States with his 14ers. I look at both those two people, world-class athletes, and they have stayed on the top of their game for so long. I don't know if I could even, they have joy in their running. We talked to Courtney, and you can see it in her face and in her smile every time she talks. But we talked to her about when she goes out for her morning run, that she doesn't have a coach. She goes out there and runs by feel. And if it doesn't feel good, she won't run as far. And if she's feeling really good, she'll go out for a long run because she enjoys it. And I see Killian doing the same thing. He's backed away from, the race pace schedule that he used to have, and works maybe on different projects like this 14er. I don't know if there was a name for it. You probably know what the name of it was, Floris.
States of elevation. Yes.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
I think that's so spot on, well said. And I feel even when I look at both of these athletes, at some point they've done most of the races out there, and it's like, what brings you excitement? I think it's really cool to see Courtney now. She just ran her first marathon. Now she's gonna run a second road marathon. She's trying something completely different.
Yeah.
And then even with Killian starting to go after several of these different projects, this is where I feel I notice this in our coaching program sometimes, people signing up just for another marathon. And it's like, does that truly bring you excitement, or just signing up for another ultra? Is that truly what brings you excitement, or do you want to go back to the drawing board and just ask yourself the question, is this what I really want to do? Is this truly what brings me joy, or is it that I'm used to it and many of my friends are signing up for it? For example, last year I completed the world major marathons, all 6. And I've done a variety of different trail races in running. And at some point I was like, what do I want to do next? What excites me?
Mm-hmm.
And a few different friends started talking about triathlon. And it's like, I don't want to do a triathlon. I have zero desire to like go in one of those spandex suits and go on a triathlon course. It just wasn't yet. Some of my friends, we came up with this idea of let's swim in the ocean. Like we ended up swimming for a bit over a mile. Let's ride 90 miles from like Southern California beach to like Mount Baldy. And then we end up running up Mount Baldy. And that was like an adventure with 14,000 foot climb. And it took us forever. And it was harder than most of the ultras I've done. But it was once again mixing it up. And so I think don't always sign up for just the next thing, but truly go back to the drawing board sometimes and mix it up and keep it exciting that way.
I like your drawing board analogy there. What else can I do with all this fitness that I've built in my body? There's more things than just bib and finish line. I've trained pretty hard. I've worked on a great aerobic engine. What else can I apply that to? Is it kayaking? Is it road bike? What could it be? Because it's a great gift to have that. And that gift will freshen the mind. It'll let some of those niggles and spots that you've been pounding into the ground heal a bit and allow you to be more elastic and excited and passionate about returning to your run.
It may be checking some of those honeydew projects off your list, like redoing the garden out in the backyard, Freeman.
Ryan, you can edit that without a okay.
Classic. No,
Michelle doesn't want to hear that one.
No, I do think, yes, like looking at different projects, but even within the running itself, I think as runners start to age there's quite a few listeners to this podcast, I'm sure as well, into their late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond. I think sometimes we have this thing of like, oh, I'm starting to get older. My best running years are ahead of us or are behind me. Meaning like you might actually be surprised how many runners are still running their best years well into their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And I see that on a daily basis. Whereas I think if you train your approach, like start changing your approach to training and actually like respect the body in a proper way and train with the right intensities and be calm to the nervous system. And instead of forcing it, you're actually letting the running come to you. I see so many runners run their best years like way later than they think. And I think mindset plays an incredibly big role in that. And like just seeing, even this weekend, like there was the New York Marathon, and seeing some runners well into their 70s running very strong races. And I see it in ultras. Like see 70 and 80-year-olds like running and finishing strong ultras. Like you have to believe you can do it. But I think, yeah, the mindset plays such a big one in that.
As you said that, it made me think your best running times may be behind you, but your greatest running times may be ahead of you.
Yep.
One using a clock and the other using your smile as your measure.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
that was-
yeah, 100%. It can be seen in a variety of different ways, whether that is indeed in finish times, whether that's in enjoying the workout, whether that is, yeah, being able to consistently go out there with friends. Yeah, that's so well said.
Scott, I saw your finger go to that Eureka button. I think the rest of us have that already in our mind, so you don't have to be redundant.
Okay, you can get your own Eureka button if you want someday, Freeman. Hey, Floris, you've kind of alluded to the answer to this, but I'm going to make it the last question of the episode. What do you hope readers would get out of reading Running Breakthroughs? If they purchased the book, what would you hope they would get out of it?
I think one of the main things I feel, if we just dial it back and we zoom out, why are we running? What is one of the main reasons we're getting out there? It is for enjoyment, it is for health, it is for community element. It can be for a variety of different ways, right? But I think if we're looking at the longer game, instead of so short term focused on finish times and distance finish and pace and all of that, and we realize you can actually have a tremendous amount of joy by being flexible with your training paces, by adjusting on the day to day, by having grace with self. Yes, you got to push yourself sometimes to kick yourself under the butt and get out of the door, but other times to really back off. I think that daily basis is very, very important. Having grace with self. You're enough the way you are. You don't have to post crazy things on Strava. No one cares about your Strava time but you. And once people can stop that, leave the ego at the door, and just go out there, you'll be surprised, especially for runners when you've hit a certain plateau. Like just let the running come to you. Set yourself up with the right systems, and gradual improvements will come. Like you don't see that in one day and 1 week, but once you start realizing you can run with so much joy and like just experience that fully, like this whole new world opens to you. And it doesn't only apply to your running, but you'll start showing up as a better husband or wife, or a better business partner, or a better parent, or like these things. It's like lessons for life, not just for running there.
The book name, the full book name, is called Running Breakthroughs, Transform Your Running and Life. Proven lessons from world-class athletes, experts, and recreational runners. Where can someone pick this up, Floris? Where's the best place? Where give them an idea where they can get this book.
It's available in a lot of different locations. You can find it through my website, florisgierman.com, my name. It's also available on Amazon in the US and international, Barnes & Nobles, and a variety of other specialty bookstores as well.
And of course, we'll put that in the show notes that you can link to. Floris, thank you so much. We've known you now for, I don't even know how long. It's been at least 10 years.
Yes.
And we've actually attempted to run with you. I've attempted to run with you until I pulled a hammy.
I've got that picture. That's classic.
They got it on film. I was running up a hill, and all of a sudden it went whammo. So that was one of my most embarrassing times I've ever had on the trail.
That's right. I literally have a sequence photo of you pulling your hammy. That was it was a beautiful run until that moment. It was yeah.
Well, thank you for putting this together. I think that I will say one of the things that makes it a little bit different is it's not something that you need to read cover to cover. It's something that you could put on your coffee table and open it up and get one small gold nugget and implement that. So if you're using it as a training book, you could say, hey, I'm stuck, I need a breakthrough. Randomly open the book, read one of the short chapters, and implement that, and see if that helps you in your experiment of one.
Yeah, I really don't have the attention span these days to read a book cover to cover like that. And so I wrote it in short article, blog post chapters that are easy to digest in the specific areas that people might resonate with. So.
Floris, you've done so much for the community. We really want to recognize you and thank you. You've done, podcasts. You're now an author. You're a co-founder of Path Projects, so gear we all love to wear. You're a coach. You're a runner. And importantly, you're a friend to the community, and you're very approachable, and you're out there leading with your heart. And that's what we love about you.
Thank you guys so much. Seriously, I honestly feel if it wasn't for you guys and your podcast, I don't think I would have been where I am running wise, and I don't think this book have existed. So thank you guys. You guys have literally played a massive role. Even if you guys were just a jumping board, I don't think you realize how much of an impact your podcast makes on other people. So thank you.
Well, it's because of great guests like yourself. All we do is listen. That's all, and we have a record button. Hey, whether you're feeling down in the dumps, whether you need a kick in the butt, whether you need to have grace for yourself, best thing to do is keep the shoes right by the door, put them on, lace them up, and go out and run.
Mas.